Good afternoon and happy Red Squirrel Appreciation Day 2026. Within socks, it's not socks. There are lots of fantastic communications going around today. Events, news, social media posts celebrating the UK's red squirrels and lots of the activities and successes behind their conservation. So please do get involved and share them with your networks. That would be fantastic. I'm Kay Hoare, your host for today's UK Squirrel Accord webinar, and I'm joined by Stephanie Arroyo-Arce from Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels, Louise Wilson of the Conservation Canine Consultancy, and Cairngorm Conservation Dogs Livy Wellborn, to discuss the wonderful red squirrel recovery work in Aberdeen and how conservation scent dogs are helping those efforts. And I'm sure we're going to see lots of very cute squirrel and dog pictures today, so I'm very excited. I'm sure you will be too. So we'll start with the presentations and then have a Q&A session at the end for all your budding questions. As always, I would ask you to please confine your questions for the panel to the Q&A function of Zoom rather than putting them in the chat. It just makes things so much easier for me. Brilliant. So without further ado, I will hand over to Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm going to share my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Brilliant.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about how scent detection dogs became part of our work in Aberdeen City. As our Grey Squirrel eradication program continued, we reached a point where traditional methods alone were no longer enough. This presentation is about how we adapted to that challenge and found a new solution. The Grey Squirrel Urban Eradication Program operates across Aberdeen City. Our main goal is to eradicate the invasive grey squirrel population from the city. At the same time, we aim to support the recovery of the native red squirrel, both within Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire. Finally, we want to protect the city from future invasions by detecting and removing any incoming grey squirrel as quickly as possible. It is important to mention that the grey squirrel population in Aberdeen City began with a single introduction event at Aberdeen Zoo in 1971. Since then, the population has spread throughout Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire. Genetic research has shown that this population is genetically isolated with higher levels of inbreeding and lower genetic diversity, which makes eradication possible. Our work will be divided into 3 phases. The eradication phase focuses on rapidly detecting, trapping, and removing the remaining grey squirrels within the city. The confirmation phase involves monitoring to ensure eradication has been successfully achieved. Finally, the biosecurity phase involves long-term monitoring to prevent any future invasion. It is important to mention that effective detection is critical throughout all 3 phases. Our existing detection methods have been very successful so far. We have been using public reporting via our SSRS hub, as well as rapid response monitoring surveys using feeder boxes. However, as you can see in the maps, we are now operating in a low density scenario where the remaining grey squirrels are much harder to detect. Public sirens are often difficult to verify, for example, when there is no photograph available or the sirens are quite brief. Verifying this type of reports can demand a lot of time and resources from our team. To address this challenge, we introduce an additional layer of detection using scent detection dogs. This will increase our chances of detecting and removing the last remaining grey squirrels from the city. For this, we have partnered with Conservation Canine Consultancy to train our detection team. And this is where I would like to introduce our detection team. Livy will be the handler, and we're going to have 2 dogs, Tarka and Sika. Both dogs are trained to detect greys and droppings from grey squirrels. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all of our partners who have supported us collecting samples for the last year, which has been essential to train the dogs. The dogs will participate within the 3 phases of the project. For the eradication and confirmation phase, it's important to mention that the city will be divided into 17 management zones. Eradication will be declared within each zone rather than across the city as a whole, which will help us focus our resources more effectively. The dogs will allow us to confirm sightings more quickly and efficiently and to systematically survey suitable areas across the city. This is what an operational survey will look like when responding to potential gray sightings in the city. The dogs will survey the reported location as well as suitable habitats nearby. This is what an operational survey looks like when we are conducting systematic surveys across potential gray squirrel habitat. Here you can see the locations, one location we're currently working on. The highlighted areas are those where we have been granted access to work with the dogs. And the blue line in the top is the area that we have already covered with the dogs. The information provided by the dogs will help guide the placement of feeder boxes, camera traps, or live catch traps to facilitate effective detection and removal of the gray squirrels in the city. For the biosecurity phase, we are going to use a biosecurity zoning approach, identifying 3 key areas. In green, we have the core protection zone, which is the highest priority area, Aberdeen City, which contains a well-established red squirrel population. In yellow, we have the containment zone, which is a defensive area between Aberdeen City and non-gray squirrel populations to the south. In pink, we have the prevention zone, which is an area where we know gray squirrel populations are in place. When we accomplish our project, we will be the first project that have reached gray squirrel eradication in a urban environment worldwide, which is very exciting for us. And now I would like to hand over to Luis from Conservation Canine Consultancy, who will explain more about the training process of the detection team.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Stephanie. Louise, are you happy to? Oh, there we go.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just getting it moving.
No, that's fine.
Is that okay with everyone? Can everyone see it?
Yes, I can now. Yes, brilliant.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for the invite to discuss the work that we've been doing. I'm Louise Wilson from Conservation Canine Consultancy. Just let me sort my screen out at the moment. So first of all, it's something we need to discuss is the use of, sorry, things are coming up on my screen. The use of specialist detection dogs in conservation projects really must be approached in a professional manner with careful consideration of the ethical responsibilities. Determining whether detection dogs are the most appropriate tool is really essential and should never be a default decision without professional guidance and support from experienced practitioner. So a little bit about the history of detection dogs and especially conservation dogs. So detection dogs have been used for over 9,000 years now, and this is with ancient drawings and carvings, these details have come forward. But with the professional use of sniffer dogs, that's been since around 1888. They were reported to be used to help with the investigation of Jack the Ripper. In 1895, they were recorded the use of the first conservation dogs in New Zealand in a Kakapo project. And in Belgium, in 1899, in Belgium, training dogs for the police, and that which sparked the increase of use of dogs for detection for drugs and explosives, etc. And then obviously in World War I and World War II, over 20,000 dogs were deployed in war efforts. Then that leads on to 1916, the first service dogs documented in Germany, and then 1929, the first seeing eye academy, easy for me to say, established in New Jersey. And then we had the surge in 1970 of the detection dogs with the police forces. But it's actually been more recently that conservation dog use has expanded and the benefits are increasingly known and reported. So a little bit about me. Why were we chosen? Why we looked at? So I'd been working many years with Emma, who was working for the organisations, and she contacted me regarding the use of dogs in squirrel or grey squirrel detection. And so my experience, I've got explosive detection. I work with otter detection dogs, pine marten, water vole, rodent, hedgehog. I've got an unrivaled experience in conservation detection dogs. We're multi-award winning dog teams, and we have a track record of successful projects across both invasive and endangered species detection. I've got over 22 years as an operational handler, trainer and international instructor in conservation as well as substance detection. And we provide UK leading dog teams training, mentoring and project management for all conservation initiatives. So this project actually started back in 2023 when I was approached by Scotland's Saving Red Squirrels to explore the potential use of conservation dogs in an ethical way to locate grey squirrel incursion sites and active drays. Over the following 2 years, that's where myself and Scottish Wildlife Trust and SSRS undertook in-depth consultancy. So this wasn't a quick project. We did a lot of work involved in feasibility study to look at whether dogs was the right way forward and how we were going to ethically do this to create a non-invasive detection method in the area for long-term success of the project. So we did site visits to Aberdeen where we carried out alongside a feasibility study, assessing all aspects of the project, identifying what type of approach and maximising impact in line with the project's objectives. So why use dogs? So obviously we're all dog lovers here, but ultimately not everyone will be. So looking at dogs as a tool, I don't like to use the word tool because they actually are a being, but ultimately as a detection method, it is reliable, it is long-term cost effective, it's one of the most efficient methods of detection, it's a non-invasive detection method, it is much faster than human survey teams relying on just visuals, and it's non-biased. So the dog won't necessarily go to a habitat where we think is a grey squirrel habitat and say, right, they're here unless they are there. So a lot of the time humans are very biased on their approach. It's got less environmental impact and disturbance when using dogs with a higher success of evidence found. So one thing we had to do with any projects, one like this, for example, is we had to make sure we picked the right dog and the handler. So we had to look for a dog that was really socially, environmentally sound. This dog is obviously going to work in a lot of urban settings as well as rural settings, but it's also going to be visiting people and having God, I can't speak, demonstrations amongst people. So the dog had to make sure that dog was socially aware around people as well as all environments. These dogs, unlike some of the searches that I do, where I might be right in the middle of the wilderness, these dogs are going to be actively in an urban setting. So vehicles, bikes, motorbikes, public, dog walkers, the dogs have to get used to all these different disturbances and distractions in the environment. The handler needed to be strong enough to be able to lift the dog when required. One of our requirements is to be able to help ID a specific tree or a particular area of potential dray. Is once a dog has shown interest in that area, is the handler is to lift the dog, get the dog as high as possible to make sure we can really ID exactly which tree this odour is coming from. We also wanted willfully disobedient dogs, but yet they had to be manageable in urban settings. As someone that's been working with detection dogs for 22 years, I've got 13 dogs myself, and we have them willfully disobedient. And so that's a nice way of saying they have got their own sense of self and they will pull on a lead. And these are the behaviours that we do really want from our working dog. We also want them to have low prey drive. The dogs will with low expression of predatory motor patterns. It's really important for us to make sure these dogs are not hunting the squirrel. So these are specifically detection dogs that when they find their target odor, they get rewarded with the ball. They get rewarded with play. They do not get rewarded with any animal parts. So these are not hunting dogs. These are detection dogs. And the dog needed also to be agile, good at proprioception. They need to be able to climb in certain areas, sometimes climb around trees and bushes. So they need to make sure they have really good proprioception. And we also needed a multi-dog project. So we needed a localized dog team for a rapid response, but we also needed to make sure this person was able to have multi-dogs for the areas that need to be covered, vast areas, and making sure we always had a dog available. but not every job is good for every dog. And so we had to make sure that these dogs were picked, because there is lots of challenges and there is lots of dangers. And conservation projects are just as important as substance detection, such as explosives. So we had to approach the training in that same manner. So best practice considerations that we had to think about. So the project aim is to ethically and non-invasively detect grey squirrel drays and incursion sites, ensuring the welfare of both the target and the non-target species. So once again, the dog is not hunting grey squirrels, but also this dog needed to be okay around other animals, whether that is dogs, whether that is cattle, whether that is red squirrels and ducks and any other species that's in that environment. So this is really, really important aspect of the work that professional conservation dogs do. The project approach. So we wanted detection dogs to passively indicate evidence of grey squirrels, supporting the identification of areas for further investigation. So now you've got this low density. We needed to kind of highlight using dogs of them telling us where the hotspots are of the movement of these animals. Selection of the right dogs with the low expression of predatory motor patterns to the animals. So we don't want that dog to show any behavior of wanting to chase animals. But this dog obviously still needs to want to play and chase its ball and have fun. So a lot of our work is play orientated. The dogs, once again, are not hunting squirrels. So selecting the right handler for this, and based on the location and the ability and the use of multi-dog team, this was really critical for the project success. I'm all the way down here in North Wales. Obviously, I cover the whole of the UK with the type of work I do, but for a rapid response of any potential sightings, we did need that location of that handler was really important. So key challenges. So acquiring suitable odour samples for training. So making sure we acquired the right odour and also the right discrimination odours as well, and making sure they're not contaminated with any other species and all the other things we have to deal with conservation dogs. So that was a really hard part of the project. Developing best practice guidelines for the project. So making sure we're looking at how we're best practice, are we going to do this effectively and ethically. Implementing this long-term 1-year training and mentoring program. So once we acquired the handler, and luckily enough, I actually knew Libby anyway. She'd been coming training with me already, which was superb with someone being in the area. But once that, we needed to make sure we had a long-term year training and mentoring program. And that was to look at everything. Obviously, you have got yearly changes with weather. So we had to make sure we did training in all different types of weather, but also getting hold of the odour, making sure we have reasonable hides, making sure we have the dog over live areas as well, but making sure the handler is adequately experienced as well, experienced and competent and confident in those environments. Expert species specific dog training. So we had to make sure it isn't just putting an odor out and the dog finding it. We have to think of a lot of things species specific to this particular project. Training on odor at height. So these odors are high. So we had to make sure that we're training the dog to be as accurate as possible when they do come across a grey squirrel dray. And obviously that creates challenges. Smooth and effective deployment. So part of this mentoring is I'm here to help with the deployment part of it. It isn't just about the training. It's about being there on hand to help with the deployment and the situations that happen with deployment. So insight. Short one-off courses are really insufficient for complex conservation projects. So this is why we jumped to the 1-year long-term project of mentoring. It makes sure it's comprehensive, and that long-term training really ensures the reliability and maximizes the project's impact and the longevity of the project. So that's my section done, and I'll happily pass you over now to Libby, the dog handler.
Thanks very much, Louise. Libby seems to be having a few problems with her audio and speakers and mic. I don't know, Libby, whether you have had any luck. No, still not working. Oh no. Do we want to, I don't know, have you tried turning your computer on and off, Libby, as well as logging in and out of Zoom?
The other option, I'm not sure if it would work, if I called her on the phone and I held my phone up to your to the microphone and see if that would help.
I mean, it might do. I've got Libby's presentation. I don't know whether anybody else can give it if Libby's not able to.
I could do, unless she's done this on purpose, so she's tried to get out of talking.
Um, there are a couple of questions. We could look at those if you want to turn the cameras back on. I don't know whether Libby might be able to fiddle around,
Okay.
sort some things out. And if not, maybe we'll try that. There's a question for Stephanie, whether you're still looking for training locations. They've had a report of a red and grey squirrel dray next to each other, however, and they're trapping in the area, so the grey squirrel hopefully won't be around much longer.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's something that I always talk to Livy and Luis about it. Because in the past we were looking for active gray drays to take the dogs. So it would be a case if Luis thinks that we still need to train them with live drays in other locations outside Aberdeen, then yes, that will be very useful. Um,
Great, thank you. One for Louise. Brilliant talk, Louise. The lovely concept of willful disobedience. Is this something you can train for, or does it need to be an inherent quality in the individual dog, and how do you assess for it?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I was assessing two dogs yesterday specifically for willful disobedience. And you've got one dog, a Cocker Spaniel, he's absolutely brilliant at being disobedient. But then some ex-gun dogs came to me, and obviously with those breeds, and especially that particular breeding, it's a little bit harder because those dogs have been bred to kind of really do as they're told, if you like. But you can, obviously, we work with mostly rescue dogs. I've got 13 dogs, and 11 of those are rescue dogs. And yet we can really promote this willful disobedience. I can allow your dog to be trained to be a naughty dog. That's definitely something we can do. But some dogs, it depends if they really don't enjoy that. So, for example, pulling on a lead, pulling towards an odor when the handler is telling them to go to another area. Some dogs love it, some dogs really don't. So I can normally assess, I do a dog assessments, and a lot of detection dog companies can assess a dog to see if it's got the right type of behavioural and characteristics to make a dog that is good for detection for something like this. Yeah.
And is there an age cutoff for I know you say you work with rescue dogs, but are you trying to look for younger dogs though?
So you can always teach an old dog new tricks. So that's something. But you also look at whether you want to be training an older dog to do a project, which actually conservation work is probably one of the hardest backgrounds I have now. So my explosive search days was much easier than my conservation days. So I definitely got it the wrong way round with my age. So it's really physically demanding from a handler perspective, but it's also really physically demanding from a dog. And you have to remember when the dog is out in that environment, it isn't just searching for one odor, it's discriminating millions of odors. So therefore, the impact on the dog's senses is huge. It's absolutely exhausting. And so with a cut-off of an age, I normally look at dogs from obviously I can look at puppies, but I can normally look at them up until 4 years old. Whether I would rehome a dog at 4, it depends on the character of that dog and whether that dog still has got lots of gusto and would like to be going out in all weather doing this type of work. But if someone came to me to assess a dog, yesterday's dog was 4.5 and I was assessing that dog. So yeah, that's not a problem.
Are there any breeds that are particularly better than others?
You've also always got personal preference of breed. So 22 years working in this industry, I've tend to work with Springer Spaniels, Cockers, Labradors. I've got a Malinois as well. It depends on the project. Also, it depends on the personal, you need to know. You have to work, you've got some dogs that are better at olfaction than others, but ultimately you also want to look at this gusto and this enthusiasm and this working ability. Will they want to do it? So like bloodhounds are some of the best detection or scent dogs in the world. However, they don't always want to get up in the middle of the night to do a search, or they might do a search for a little bit and say, right, I'm tired, I want to go away. So you have to look at that work ethic. And that's where your Springers and your Cockers have got amazing work ethic, but you have to check
And
on
energy.
yeah, and energy, but you also have to check on what their background training has been. So any dog that has been obviously allowed to hunt, allowed to pick up animals, anything like that, are dogs that we just don't look at. We just don't give them. That's not fair to put a dog that has got hunting drive in a situation where they're being ethical and non-biased in their environment, and we just want them to really love a ball, love the toy and the play aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess especially with the Aberdeen work, you've got red squirrels that you certainly don't want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is willful disobedience important for detection?
So it's mostly because, say, if you are doing a search with a dog and you're going specifically to a habitat where you biasly think this is a habitat for grey squirrel, or someone's seen a grey squirrel over here, and we're pulling the dog to that area, but the dog is then pulling us to another area, and just think these dogs are going to be kept on lead for the safety of the dog, safety in the environment, and the dog is pulling you to another area. If the dog was really appeasing and says, okay, mum wants me to search over this way, and then misses that potential area of odor. So therefore, you really want that dog to, when it is in that odor, that it's going to pull on that lead. And so a lot of dogs, we train them not to pull on a lead, not to be disobedient. We kind of really want that willful disobedience. We want that freedom of thought. So we want them to be able to think for themselves.
Yeah. A couple more for you, and then we'll go back to one for Stephanie. Sorry. What about diseases that might be able to go from dogs to squirrels or squirrels to dogs?
Yeah, there's all these things. Anything regarding that with biosecurity. Obviously, the health of the dog is paramount. One of the things is our dogs are not touching squirrels. So these dogs are doing exactly what your dog doing when you're taking the dog for a walk. And hopefully, when your dog goes for a walk, it isn't touching grey squirrels. So we make sure our dog are not having any contact with any. Well, hopefully, with no animal at all, but with no squirrels and no other animals in the environment. So even when we come to finding grey squirrel droppings, it's not touching, it's not ingesting, it's not doing anything like that. So as soon as when you talk about biosecurity of the dog, we have to take that into consideration and have biosecurity measures in place, and making sure that, unfortunately, sometimes you have to disinfect your dog down. You have to make sure your dog has distant indications, so you haven't got that cross-contamination of your dog yet.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned multi-dog teams. Can you explain that a little? Is that so dogs can take breaks, or because different dogs have different capabilities?
Yep, both of those things. So ultimately, one from a welfare rest point of view, when one's been working covering, say, if Seeker's covered a huge area, then there's another area to cover. You drive to another area, you actually get your second dog out and cover that. But also, you've got two different breeds here, so you have got two different abilities and two different characters as well. But it's making sure that we have got, if one dog becomes poorly, that Libby is available with the other dog all the time. So it's making sure we're always got that rapid responsibility. You've also got two dogs, two crazy dogs that with different characters. It's really nice to be able to put them in the environment that suits them better.
Brilliant. Stephanie, so this is a great project. Is there any scope to expand to other areas of Scotland?
Well, at the moment, Saving Scotland's Red Squirrel works across Scotland, so we have different projects. For the use of detection dogs, we're focusing in Aberdeen City because this is a long-term project. And to achieve the confirmation phase, it's going to be at least 2 years. And after that, we have the biosecurity phase. So we still have a lot of work to do in Aberdeen. But I think for sure what we're doing with Wiz and Libby is going to be an example for other projects to duplicate or replicate in other areas.
Yeah, that's great. And is this the first squirrel project where scent dogs have really been used?
Yeah, I have been looking into it. Maybe Luis can contradict me, but I think we are the first project using scent detection dogs for grey squirrels.
Excellent. So Libby's unfortunately still having issues. Louise, do you want to try and go through Libby's presentation, see if that works?
Yep, let's go. And she's messaging me, so I can always tell her. She can always tell me if I'm doing it wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, so if you've got it, or if Libby's going to do it, either or.
That's the right one, isn't it?
Nothing's come up just yet. It's coming up now.
Yep. It's the right. Has that worked? Is that look okay?
Yeah, it's just you can see all the screens rather than just, it's come up now. It's probably just a little bit delayed.
Yes, there is a bit of delay that reminds.
Okay. So obviously I'm not Libby, but Libby Wellborn is the handler for the Grey Squirrel Dray project up in Scotland. So we're going to talk about the introduction to actually the team and the dogs that she has herself. So introduction to the operational dog teams, the dog selection, why Cairngorms, sorry if I'm saying that wrong with my Wigan accent, we can't say many words right, why Cairngorms conservation dogs, project requirements and the challenges that we've had, and supporting the dogs for efficient and success, and looking ahead and the acknowledgements and the thanks as well. What a beautiful picture of Seeker there. So talking about the team. So Sika, a lovely 4-year-old Australian Kelpie. She is wonderful. It's not a dog that I have had personally in my home, I should say, but definitely a dog that I love to work with. I've worked with these over in Australia and absolutely beautiful. She's agile, she's athletic, she's intelligent, she's independent but responsive. First dog to work on the project. So we started the project with Sika before we actually brought Taka on board. She's been in training for over 3 years on scent detection foundation. So this is where Libby was coming to me for training, and obviously always wanted to be. Oh, we've gone ahead a few. Oh, it will come back again. She always wanted to do conservation detection, and she was putting all her time into getting. And we were working on Seeker, and we were looking at the scent detection foundations, which were perfect foundations to follow on to the squirrel odor and all the training that followed. So this is a true trail dog. She loves running. Libby's a big runner, as you can tell by my body. I'm not, but Libby does a lot of running up in Scotland, and Seeker is wonderful companion for her for that type of work. And she loves being in the hills, and she loves being off duty just as much as she loves being on duty. And Taka, beautiful, beautiful Taka. And so she's a 2-year-old English Springer Spaniel. And I love my Springers because I always say I'm a human Springer Spaniel. I always say I work like a Springer and I eat like a Labrador. But I love my Springers, and she's a lovely, happy, happy Springer. Aberdeenshire born and bred. She's biddable, fearless, and high search drive. And she absolutely loves doing this work. It's the best thing since sliced bread for her. She got introduced to the project after Seeker, so she is a little bit behind on Seeker. Seeker is absolutely brilliant at this, and she's actually already already ready to rock and roll. But with regards to Taka, she just needed that little bit more time, and also sometimes that little bit more age on her to mature a little bit in training since puppyhood. So the puppy foundations was really key, especially when I knew Taka when she got as a puppy, when Libby got her as a puppy. And there was lots of things I was telling Libby not to do with her. And this is the difficulty if you do have people have a pet dog and they want to work with that dog in conservation, a lot of the training you do with a pet dog sometimes inhibits that really true efficiency of that working dog. So there was lots of things that I had to say to Libby of not to do and trying to avoid. But that worked out really great, because now with her scent detection training, she's coming on great, and she is completely different to Sika, but it really has that perfect kind of teamwork, because Sika works a certain way and Taka works a different way. It makes that perfect teamwork. She lives up to her namesake. She loves to swim when off duty, and she is up for anything. She's a bit crazy sausage, so we kind of have to put a lot of work in to make sure she realizes she's got legs attached to the rest of her body. So that proprioception work comes in. So that's from a handler point of view. We want that exuberance, but we actually do want to make sure she is self-aware of the rest of her body. Sorry, so handler, so Libby, absolutely wonderful. I've been great working with Libby for so many years. She's actually a professional ecologist, ecological consultancy for 13 years, and based in Northern Scotland, and ability to facilitate that rapid response requirement, which is really, really good. She's got Bachelor in Science in Wildlife Conservation and a dog owner for 11 years, experience with training and working and living with breeds, but multi-breeds as well. She's got lots of breed experience, and she's also used to dogs being exuberantly willfully disobedient, which is really a key thing with this, because we don't want a dog that's under too much impulse control and too much obedience. So she has been training with us at Conservation Canine Consultancy since 2021, and then started the 12-month mentorship, which is kind of regular video assessments with ourselves. So we have to make sure that every step is kind of mentored along the way, making sure that obviously we have to give Livy that ability to be a trainer, not just a handler, because she needs to continue this project. We don't want her to be completely reliant on us. So after we've done handler training, she's done handler training with our dogs as well. So not just her own dogs, because we have to make sure we fulfill everything. We make sure she's a really good handler independently of the dog. We don't want the dogs to carry a handler. We want them to be absolutely brilliant teams individually, so when they're together, they're absolutely perfect. So dog selection, so finding the right attributes for the job. So shared traits that both dogs, so lack of prey drive. And so it's really important that we're making sure that these dogs aren't going, being busy in the environment, searching for critters. A lot of people email me says, my dog's really good at searching for critters. It'll be a good conservation dog. No, it won't. It's absolutely opposite what we want. We also want the dogs to be really safe and effective in urban environments. So the hazard awareness, confidence and responsiveness. We want them to have functional obedience, and it's a really good way to put it. We want them to have obedience when it's functional, when there's a requirement for it. This is where the project that Libby has got, it's not straightforward. It is very complicated. She's got areas where she won't be allowing the dogs to pull on the lead, but we also need them to search right near roads, near dangerous obstacles. So therefore, she has got a lot of challenges, but we do need a dog that does have that freedom of thought. Happy to be lifted. So this is another thing. Not every dog wants to be lifted, especially in the middle of a search. So we've had to kind of really work on them dogs being happy to be lifted up high, sat on Libby's shoulders and lifted so they can smell at the same time. So we don't want them just to be lifted and then to stop smelling. So these are all environmental and training aspects that we've had to navigate. Also making sure they love the natural environment and the obstacles of climbing on things, but also when they're in the urban settings, you know, fences and walls, they're going to have to navigate things like this. Physically fit and agile, it's really important. It is a really demanding job for conservation dogs, so they have to be physically fit and agile and also willing to kind of climb on things and move around and use their whole body, just not only their nose. So toy and ball drive, so that is the really most important thing. We even though we use food in our training, we don't use it obsessively in our operational deployments, especially a lot of the work that I do wildlife crime detection as well with the police. Poison is an issue, and poisoned animals and poisoned meat is an issue that we come across. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue in Aberdeen, but you never know. So none of our dogs want to eat anything when they're working. They are there doing it for the ball and for the play, and usually for a cuddle from Libby as well. They enjoy the search element as well as the final reward. So we had to make sure it's completely balanced, that the dog want to do the searching, but also want to find. You get some dogs, your Cocker Spaniels tend to be, they love smelling. They might find that odor and they might keep on going because they found their odor, they've ticked the box in their own brain and they want to keep on going. We need to make sure these dogs are really focused on when they find it, they're going to get their ball. So they love their ball. So they're happy to always make sure they tell you when they found something. We don't want them to be kind of self-employed from that point of view. We don't want them to just be self-rewarding themselves. So breed differences, herding dogs versus the gun dog. So you have got breed differences, and this will change the characteristics. And this is where it's great because Libby has experience with both these different breeds. Movement and search patterns. So Seeker, she works completely different to Tarka. Tarka does lots of quartering, lots of fast movement. Seeker works with intention. Everything, she's thinking about it. Very much like Libby, thinks about it before does it. And that is good because the team together work brilliantly. Earth scenting versus ground scenting. You know, your Springer keeping her nose down, Seeker is keeping her nose up. Obviously, they're both trained to find things on the ground as well as at height. Personality differences, they're completely different. They couldn't be further apart. Absolutely lovely. I can sit and cuddle Tarka, but Seeker doesn't want me to kiss her and cuddle her. You know, you have got these personality differences, which is really beautiful. And then play and reward preferences. You have got really different how you can play and reward and interact with that dog once you have made a find. And taking the dogs into account as individuals to get the best from their work. So a lot of the work I do is dog-centered approach. I look at the dog and think, what does Tarka need or what does Seeker need to make her be the best working dog in this situation? How can we fulfill their need, not just the project's need as well? So project requirements and challenges. So supporting the dogs for the efficiency and success. So what is required of the dog? So really, we need to make sure the environmental situations, you've got these environmental challenges. And a lot of our work, we don't necessarily need to continuously train for dogs to be in really urban settings. A lot of the searches that I do, whether it's pine martens, waterfalls, otters, we're away from people a lot of the time. This work is completely different. So we had to really, after we'd done the initial training of the dog on odor, we had to make sure the dogs are happy in your urban parks, your sidewalks I sound like American, but your paths and by your roads, all these situations where really, as dog people, we tend to avoid. And especially Libby, she's a fell runner. She likes to be up in the mountains running around. So they're completely different. So we had to put the work in with these dogs to make sure they are comfortable in that environment. No doubt they will work in that environment. That's a given, but we want them to be as happy in that environment as they are in the rural settings. So northern latitude, short days, cold temperatures in autumn and winter. So really your environmental changes and how cold it can be, and hate to say it, how miserable the weather can be. We have to make sure a dog is hardy and robust in those situations. Unfortunately, we don't get to call to only do the searches on those nice sunny days. That's why I say to people, we have to, as conservation dog handlers, you have to be used to being wet and dirty most of the time. So the technical challenges, so we need detection of live and usually healthy animals. So acquiring the odor. So we don't want to train the dogs just on dead grey squirrels that we've been sent and things like this. So we have to really be careful on how we train a dog and how the dog acquires that odor. If it's been contaminated, if it's been stored in certain bags, we have to think of all the variables that might challenge the dog in the operational environment. We have to make sure we do detection of odour at height in active drays. So we had to locate active drays. I'm in North Wales. We've got loads of grey squirrels. Finding active drays in the area where we can safely reward the dog, making sure we're rewarding the dog on the correct odour. These are the massive challenges based on conservation searches and conservation work. My background is drugs, explosive tobacco. We can actually get that odour legally, but much easier than we can get conservation odours. And we obviously still need licenses for certain conservation odours. And we're always making sure we're working with the experts in the industry and in the area and species experts to make sure we're ethically acquiring the odour. We have to make sure that we're not just reliant on human visual confirmation. So we might have areas, and this is the thing, someone might say, oh, we've seen a squirrel around there, that's a dray. We take the dog to the area, the dog isn't indicating on that, where someone might have seen a potential what looked like a dray, and it isn't a dray. So you can't just like reward your dog because it's not a dray. So it's been really, really challenging. Highly mobile target species. It moves around quickly. So therefore we have to think about how that odor is interpreted by the dog. We're not wanting the dog to run around and chase squirrels. That's not what the dog's doing. The dog has to find evidence that is tangible evidence that can be documented there and then. And lower likelihood occurrence of real fines due to huge successful work by SSR regarding the already existing eradication. So you've got really low density. So it's not like the dog is going to be finding fines all the time, which is good because we don't want to have millions of grey squirrel, but ultimately that causes issue from a training perspective, and we have to make sure we've done discrimination training so the dogs are not interested by the odor of red squirrel. Obviously completely different species, so it's not like they smell the same anyway, but we have to make sure we're ticking those boxes with anything with regards to conservation. Okay. And supporting the dogs to achieve the best results possible. So this is what's really important. It's about Libby supporting the dogs. It's not about the dogs doing it all on their own. And it's also not about Libby doing it on her own. It's very much a teamwork. So the practical considerations and the kit. So dogs need to be comfortable working on a line. So the dog had to be, these dogs are very much used to being offline, off the lead. So all their trainings from day one have started with getting them acquainted with the lead, making sure, especially Seeker, will pull on the lead. Tarka's happy to pull on the lead. Seeker at first, she's very good, and she was like, I'm not going to pull because you don't want me to be pulling the lead. So we had to teach her, you're allowed to pull. So that did take time. Dog PPE, so high visibility vest, the boots, eye protection, inclement weather protection, information and badges on the dogs. All these things can affect a dog, and a springer will always look like they're working. And this is what we need to realize is when the dog's got olfaction fatigue, or literally the dog's pretending to work and it's not working. Seeker is very true and honest, but springers generally tend to lie. So we've had to make sure we definitely know if the dog is uncomfortable in the environment and if their noses stop working. Operational nutrition and hydration. So Libby now has the fact that she needs to make sure the nutrition, the supplementation, hydration, everything is right for the dogs. Also making sure we keep an eye on the dog's over arousal, and on the middle picture, that's where Taka is using a licky mat, and we recommend and promote the use of licky mat for working dogs, because she's getting aroused and lots of exuberance. We need to make sure we can bring her back down, because we need to make sure she's still got cognition. So too much arousal, she kind of brain goes, nose goes, everything goes. So we use a licky mat both with Sika and with Taka to make sure. And it's a really good moment of creating really good contentment with the dog. But we have to make sure the dog has breaks. So during a search, you might not be able to go back to the vehicle during a break. So she might have to sit down in the grass and let the dog just have a rest. Teaching a dog to say, right, okay, don't do any more work at this moment isn't as easy as it sounds. A lot of the dogs want to keep on going. So making sure the dog is happy just to sit in the grass with Libby, have a moment, breathe, have a licky mat, maybe some treats and maybe her water before she moves on to another area for searching. So is the final reward safe for the environment? So thinking about toys, it's not about launching a ball or throwing a toy or even tug toys. We need to make sure we can give the toy to the dog safely without having to throw it, because we don't want to throw it and it go into a road, go under a car. So the dog has to be happy to accept the toy from the hand. As much as that sounds really simple, not a lot of working dogs are happy with that, because they might want the ball to be thrown. So working on that, making sure the final reward, a safe way that we can actually give that to the dogs. Let's see what I'm talking about now. Odor detection. So training on operational scenarios. So treating the dogs as individuals. It's really key. And that's what's beautiful about Libby. These dogs are her family members. They're not her kids, they're her family members. And that's what's really good, because she knows about the individual traits that the dog has, and she takes it in consideration on every single training event we do and every single training session. Sika is completely different to Taka. And if you try to train Taka like Sika, that would go wrong, and vice versa. We also have to build positive relationship with odor. So it is finding this odor and really treating the dog or teaching the dog to have this contentment. It's not about launching a ball in really quickly. Sometimes the dog might indicate in an environment, and us humans, we can't see it. So the dog has to have really this positive relationship with the odor, but not a what's the word I'm trying to look for? It's avoided me completely, but we want them to have patience whilst we're there and we're trying to locate the drop-ins. We don't want them to think, right, you need to give me my reward straight away, and get impatient with us. We want them to sit there and allow us and help us to actually locate those drop-ins. So that takes a really lot of impulse control for a dog that has just searched for a long time, found a drop-in, wants its ball, and then realizes us humans, we're really ridiculously slow at what we do, and we're not very good with our nose or our eyes. And so they have to understand our own limitations. So range of habitats as well, and the conditions, the weather, the environments. These are the whole things that sometimes make our job really, really hard. As much as we all enjoy being out in the wilderness and out in the environment, it actually becomes really hard, because the environmental conditions can be challenging, not just for us, but for our dogs. So therefore you see a lovely picture of Taka with a lovely high visibility, like aqua fleece jumper on. But you've got these situations, you've got the PPE for yourself as a handler and also for your dog, but it also affects efficiency. So too much PPE on us can make it heavy, harder stuff for us to carry, also gets us very, very hot. It's the same with the dog. So we have to be thinking about all these considerations all the time. Blind searches. So this is a hard thing, especially for Libby living out in the sticks. Getting someone to be able to put your training odor out for you, to film the video so then I can review the videos. That has been one of the most challenging things. Luckily enough, she's been able to get people involved in this. Making sure disturbance, the dog isn't going just to where the area of disturbance is of where we've put the odor. Making sure the handler isn't the one that's putting the odor out. It's a key element, especially with dogs like Sika. She's very, very in touch with Libby. So she will know if Libby knows where the odor is. So blind searches has been the most important aspect of this. Like with any detection, it's been so important to make sure that, and when we do training, I put a lot of areas out where I put something out where Libby might think it might be the odor, to see if her body promotes the dog to do a false indication. And luckily it doesn't. Luckily enough, the dogs say, hey mum, I think you're wrong, I'm going to move on and show you where the dray is. So it's really good. If our bodies become kind of biased, and a lot of people say there's a dray there and you're pushing your dog on an area constantly, and the dog saying no, 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 it isn't there, that's really, really important factor. Gradual increase of height and difficulty. So that's involved climbing trees to put odors in. So lots of climbing of trees to put odors in to make sure that dog can actually acquire the odor from a height, and working out how that scent picture falls in different environments, and creating creativity in how we replicate different odor presentations to the dog. So really, how do we create that dray? How do we put them droppings out? How do we make the tracks of the animals? We've had to be very creative in our ways of doing it. Luckily enough, I've had lots of projects in my working career where I've had to use different initiatives to help create these. So it's always fun being able to put that into practice, especially with a new target odor. And long-term and holistic approaches taken to best to support the dog. So health and fitness is key. Fulfillment outside of the operational work. So making sure we don't just do training outside of work, we make sure them dogs are fully fulfilled. They've got lots of other brothers and sisters, humans and dogs, so they can have that outlet of play with the other dogs, playing with toys, enrichment, as well as just making sure they're having a good time. They live in the house with Libby. They're not kennel dogs. They have an absolutely lovely house. I'd still say they're not pet dogs. They are working dogs that live in a home. So therefore, Libby needs to take those things in consideration in making sure expectations that she might have had on her other pets is not the expectation she has on Sika and Taka. Dogs live as a family member. She makes sure they have rest and recovery, which is key, especially after every deployment, every training opportunity. The resting part of that work is really key to make sure it cements that knowledge in the dog's head. So what we make sure is obviously that dog is happy in crates or happy in the vehicle, because we need to make sure that dog is quite happy when we do need that dog to have downtime. Training never stops and operational readiness takes time. So bond with the dog, that relationship and that trust with the dog is key. The ability to read dogs in odor. So it's not just about the final response. And this is something, it's absolutely key for detection dogs, especially in conservation. They haven't got a yes and a no. They're not smelling a box and saying, is the odor in the box? They're smelling the whole environment where there obviously is a grey squirrel. So they're saying, well, okay, there is a grey squirrel here. And we're telling them, find where the grey squirrel is now. So this is a really key element to make sure that we don't kind of bog down on the dog having a yes and no type of description in training. They need to work the odor and say, okay, I can smell the odor here. I need to work towards where the highest concentration of that odor is, whether that's where droppings have been left or whether that is where a dray is. But reading in odor and reading that primary alert from the dog, and kind of and Libby gets into the head of the dog, and that is the beautiful part of the handling, is when you see a dog not reliant on the final response. As well as the emotion and non-detection behavior. So emotional behaviors, how is that dog feeling? So this is when I work with Libby, I'm like, how is that dog feeling that day? How are you feeling that day? How is this as a team that day? Because it all really does matter, and how we can best support the dog. And also out of work, non-detection stuff, how non-detection stuff might impact a dog in the working role. And maintenance training throughout life of projects. So good luck, Libby, of continuing that, because you have to continue it. Looking ahead, so operational work begins earnest in late January. So it is beginning. Continued training, testing of the dogs, and final few months of expert mentoring from Conservation Key from us, and including in situ visits in February. So I'm coming over and we're going to do those deployments there and then together, which is so lovely. And we look forward to really contributing to conservation of one of Scotland's most iconic mammals. That's coming from Libby and all of us. And this is a video of a recent operational search that Libby did. And obviously I wasn't there. She sent me the video. It's a bit jagged, the video. But when the dog found the odor, the videoing is really hard when you're trying to do handling as well. But there is Sika's response. And do you know what's most beautiful? Sika finds it and she looks back at her mum and she says, hey, mum, I've got the odor here. This is where it is. We still have to question the dog. Are you sure it's this tree? Is it not this tree next to this tree? And work out, because we want to highlight the exact tree. So then people can put out your camera traps and you can do everything else that's needed to be done by SSRS. But that's the role. And so when Sika gets it, you can't hear the video here, but she gets a lovely ball reward. She gets lovely play, and obviously being told that she's the most wonderful girl. And that's how it works. And from Libby and all of us, thank you very much for the project partners, helpers, supporters. It does take a village to do a project like this.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Louise. And apologies for the technical issues, everyone. We did try the tech earlier before we started and it was all working, but I'm glad you could step in, Louise. That's
I
brilliant.
think Libby did that on purpose.
We've got a few more questions and we've got a few more minutes left. So, how easy is it to achieve adequate area coverage if the dog is on a lead and isn't free searching?
Yeah, that's a hard one, and you have to weigh up. We obviously Libby's going to have a tracker on her, so she can look right. Okay, this is where I've tracked, and we do a lot. We have trackers on us with a lot of other searches, like say back carcass detection searches on wind turbine sites. And when we can look at our transect and how we've worked on a transect, and then we can look at how our dogs cover the area. So, for example, if she's got a 5 meter line, when she's covering a transect line, the dog's making 5 meters that way and 5 meters that way. She can then work out, okay, that's the area that I've covered. Area coverage isn't the issue really that we've got with this. The dog is going to be much more efficient than any human search team. What we have got the issue is the odor that's at height and how the wind flows through different trees and different woods and things like that. That is going to be the area where we will get a change in behavior from the dog, and we do, and then we have to narrow down exactly where it is. And so that's where your difficulty happens. But at the same time, if we can narrow down 3 trees rather than a whole mile, then that's better than nothing. And it's kind of thinking we have to say when we approach this project is you can't expect 100% because it is hard to even expect that with this difficulty. But we can definitely allow the dogs to show us hotspots of there is definitely grey squirrel here in
Yeah,
this area.
brilliant. Thank you very much. And there's a question on here, which is one I wanted to answer as well. So, what do you tell people not to do with a puppy when training it to be, if you want it to be a detection dog?
So I'll give you an example. I recently rescued a dog from a rescue centre contacted me, a 15-week-old Cocker Cross Labrador. It needed a working home because it's a bit of a terror. Are you happy to have it? So I went, picked her up, and when I brought her back, as I was sitting on the sofa, which is behind me, she started climbing on my workspace here. And she looked at me like to say, "Aren't you going to stop me?" And I was, "No." And I started clapping and going, "Brilliant, you keep on going." Because we want that freedom of thought. We do. We don't want her to always be under impulse control of what I'm telling her to do and not to do. I found in my career, if we do have a dog that say is an absolute brilliant dog at home and does everything it's told and kind of is one of those easy dogs, sometimes there's a je ne sais quoi missing from that working dog in a working role. So therefore, I feel like give the dogs, my house is like the fun house for dogs, allow them to have that complete freedom of thought, allow them to be, I don't want to say the word feral, but I'm going to say it anyway, be a bit feral because it just allows them to have that freedom of thought in the working environment. But from a pet dog point of view, for puppies even, there's lots of things really. It's probably not just a one word answer regarding lots of things I do. I work mostly on play drive, making sure that dog starts thinking about problem solving of situation, social and everything like that. But ultimately, I don't have the restrictions that a lot of people do when they have a new puppy at home.
Yeah, and you talked about the nose stopping working, and you know, become, I suppose it gets tired out like anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
How long does that usually take? I guess it depends on different dogs,
Oh,
but
yes, there's so many. It depends on the weather, it depends on the humidity. There needs to be moisture in the air for the dog to be able to change the odor and go to the scent receptors. There's so many things to discuss there.
mm,
But we tend to have nice working directive of 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off for our dogs. Some dogs you can actually work for longer, so it might be a 40-minute on, 40-minute off. But that depends on so many variables. But also, what the key aspect is that Libby can read her dogs when her dogs look like they're just doing the task and not actually working with their nose. And so you can do things like put your own odor out during a search, put your odor out and see if the dog is able to locate it if the dog's nose is not working. But as a detection dog handler, it's one of the key features of making sure you can see the difference of your dog just doing a search and your dog actually sniffing.
yeah. And if the dog finds a dead red squirrel, would you or would SSRS send it off for testing? Would you to find out what it died from?
So that's probably a
Yeah.
Stephanie answer.
Yeah, if we find a carcass, we usually, depends on the state of the carcass, we collect it and we send it to other parties working with, like doing different studies. So we do support other projects collecting carcasses. And depending on the state, we may collect some hair samples to provide to Libby to continue with the training because we are using both red and gray samples so that she can do discrimination order. So yeah, we do take advantage of carcasses.
Brilliant. And how much more cost effective are dog surveys over human surveys? That might be a question for both of you. Probably done both of those up.
I guess for us, because we are working in a low density scenario, we really want to know if we have grays in the city. And our methods are good, but we need to add another layer of detection. So that's why we're bringing the dogs, because they can cover areas and let us know if there is a dray or a drop-in or like a current presence of the gray in the city. So it depending on the stage of the project, at this point, because we have low numbers, it's quite useful to have detection dogs. At the beginning of the project, when the population was quite high, it's pointless because we can't detect it with other methods.
Yeah, brilliant. And we're coming right to the end of our time. Are there any final words you want to leave the attendees with? Anything you want to say finally?
Well, on our behalf, we are very excited to be working with Luis and Libby. Again, I think Luis mentioned it, but it's very nice to work with someone with like lots of experience training dogs, but it's key that she sees the dogs not as a tool, but like a partner or like the staff of our team member. So it's nice that she has very high standards for health and safety for the dogs, because that's a priority. And because of that, we're going to be able to do a good job.
Brilliant. Louise, did you want to say any final words?
This is just the start of a huge project, and the success of this is just going to be is pioneering, especially in this kind of in Aberdeen, in that type of setting. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be involved in such a brilliant project, and it's been made so much easier with a handler like Libby to train and mentor.
Yeah, and this has been absolutely fantastic to learn more about it. And I'm glad we came in at just this time when you were just starting at the end of January, and that sounds fantastic. So perfect time to be talking about it. And I guess. Yes, the scent dogs will be out there, but it's still really important for people to report their sightings. So don't forget that either, because that helps all the conservation efforts. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. I'm so sorry we didn't hear from Libby, but maybe we can hear from her in the future when we've got a bit further down the line with the project and invite you all back on. But thank you to the presenters. Thank you for everyone for attending. Good luck for the rest of the eradication work. I look forward to the completion celebrations when it's done. And just please take part in Red Squirrel Appreciation Day, in any way you can, and help us raise awareness of the UK's red squirrels. And until next time, I wish you all goodbye and good day.